The bright blue skin of Lumi's hand glowed softly as she tapped on her data tablet, recording yet another strange observation about the humans. As a third-year student at the Galactic Study Center, she had been assigned to observe Earth's dominant species for her final project. Most of her classmates had chosen to study the oceans or plant life, but Lumi had always been fascinated by these odd bipedal creatures who had somehow managed to become the planet's ruling species despite their many limitations. Day 47 of human observation, she dictated to her tablet. Subject designation Jack. Male. Age 28. Earth rotations. Lumi adjusted the viewing screen from her hidden observation post. The technology made her completely invisible to humans, allowing her to study them in their natural habitat without interference. Her current subject was a human male who worked in something called software development, which seemed to involve staring at screens and occasionally hitting small buttons very quickly. Subject has consumed the bitter brown liquid stimulant 4 times today. Physical movement has been minimal. Vocal interactions with other humans limited to the communication device and the small box that creates food. Lumi had been following this particular human for 2 weeks now. She found him to be a fairly typical specimen, not particularly remarkable in any way, which made him perfect for her study. Her professors had warned her to choose ordinary subjects to get the most accurate data on general human behavior. As the Earth's sun began to set, Lumi prepared for what humans called evening activities. Based on her previous observations, this typically involved more screen watching, food consumption, and occasionally social interaction with other humans. But tonight something strange happened. At precisely 22:47 local time, Jack stood up from his viewing screen, walked to another room, and began removing his outer coverings. He then entered a small water chamber, stood under falling water for approximately 8.3 minutes, emerged, covered himself in soft fabrics, and then did something completely unexpected. He laid his body down on a large padded platform, closed his eyes, and stopped. Lumi blinked all 3 of her eyes in rapid succession. She checked her monitoring equipment. The human's vital signs were still active, though significantly reduced. Brain activity showed unusual patterns. Muscle movement had almost completely ceased. "What is happening?" Lumi whispered to herself, increasing the sensitivity of her scanners. "Has the human malfunctioned? Is this some kind of system reboot?" She waited for the human to resume normal activity, but minutes turned into an hour, and still, he remained in this strange state. Occasionally, his body would shift position, or his face would twitch, but otherwise, he remained completely inactive. Lumi frantically searched her database for information about this behavior but found nothing specific. She considered contacting her professor but hesitated. What if this was something basic that she should already know? She would look foolish. "Computer, analyze human biological state," she commanded. After a moment, her system responded. "Human appears to be in a state known as sleep. This is a regular biological function that occurs in cycles approximately every 24 Earth hours and typically lasts 6 to 8 hours. Sleep?" Lumi repeated, bewildered. "They shut down for hours every day? How inefficient! Why would an advanced species waste so much time in an inactive state?" This was something her species never did. Lumians required brief rest periods of about 20 minutes every few days, but nothing like this complete shutdown. The very idea of being unconscious and vulnerable for hours at a time was horrifying to her. Lumi's antenna twitched with excitement. This could be the focus of her entire research project. If humans required this sleep state regularly, it must serve some critical biological function. And if her species didn't need it, what did that reveal about the fundamental differences between them? "Begin comprehensive analysis of human sleep patterns," she instructed her computer. "I want everything: brain activity, physical restoration processes, psychological effects, evolutionary purpose." For the next 7 hours, Lumi watched in fascination as Jack remained in this strange state. His eyes moved rapidly beneath closed lids at times, his breathing and heart rate fluctuated in regular patterns, and occasionally he made small noises. When Jack finally opened his eyes and rose from the platform, Lumi was still there, her data tablet filled with new observations and questions. Day 48. She recorded. I have discovered what might be humans' most vulnerable and puzzling behavior. They appear to require a complete system shutdown called sleep. This raises important questions. How did a species that becomes helpless for 1/3 of each day manage to become dominant? What happens during this shutdown? And most importantly, why do humans shut down for hours? Lumi couldn't contain her excitement as she hurried back to the Galactic Study Center's research wing. Her discovery about human sleep patterns demanded immediate investigation. The hallways of the station shimmered with the bioluminescent glow that all Lumians naturally produced, casting dancing patterns against the metallic walls. Professor Nix! Professor Nix! Lumi called out, spotting her mentor in the analysis lab. The older Lumian's skin had faded to a pale cyan with age, but his eyes still sparkled with the same curiosity that had made him the station's top xenobiologist. Professor Nix turned, his antenna perking up at Lumi's obvious excitement. What is it, student? You look as though you've discovered a new element. Better! Lumi projected her data tablet's recordings onto the lab's main screen. Humans shut down completely for hours every day. They call it sleep. It's not just rest, they become unconscious, defenseless. The professor's 3 eyes widened as he examined the readings from Jack's sleep cycle. Fascinating. And you say this happens daily? Every single day. For approximately 1/3 of their lives. Lumi's skin pulsed with bright blue excitement marks. How can a species that becomes completely vulnerable for so long have survived predators? How did they become the dominant species on their planet? Professor Nix called over 2 other researchers who quickly became equally intrigued by the data. Dr. Beam, the station's expert on biological systems, ran his long fingers over the brain wave patterns. Look at these neural oscillations, Dr. Beam said. They cycle through distinct phases. And here, rapid eye movement. The brain is quite active during certain periods despite the body's immobility. The 4th Lumian in the room, Dr. Orla, specialized in evolutionary adaptation. Her dark purple skin contrasted sharply with the others as she leaned forward to study the data. Perhaps it's some kind of energy conservation mechanism, Dr. Orla suggested. Their biological systems are less efficient than ours. Maybe they need this downtime to recharge. Lumi shook her head. But why become unconscious? Why not just rest while remaining alert like we do? Maybe they can't, Professor Nix mused. Perhaps their neuroprocessing requires this shutdown for maintenance. The group spent hours debating theories, each more outlandish than the last. One suggested sleep was a leftover evolutionary trait from when humans hid from nocturnal predators. Another proposed it was a form of daily mini-hibernation to conserve resources on a planet with harsh seasonal changes. We need more data, Lumi finally declared. I'm going back to observe the subject through multiple sleep cycles. There must be patterns or clues we're missing. Excellent initiative, Professor Nix agreed. But expand your study. Observe multiple humans of different ages. If this is truly a universal human requirement, the variations might tell us more about its purpose. For the next week, Lumi barely took her own rest periods as she observed not just Jack, but several other humans of various ages. She watched an elderly couple who slept less than Jack but woke more frequently. She monitored a young family where the smallest humans seemed to require even more sleep than adults, sometimes sleeping multiple times within a day's cycle. Most puzzling were the rituals surrounding sleep. The soft platforms they laid on, the special coverings, the darkening of rooms, the strange sounds some played to help them enter this state. They prepare for shutdown like it's a sacred ceremony, Lumi recorded in her notes. And they become irritable when deprived of it. Subject Jack missed his usual sleep period due to work demands, and his cognitive function showed measurable decline the following day. When she returned to the research center to present her expanded findings, the team had grown. News of the strange human behavior had spread throughout the station. Even Director Flux, who rarely left the administrative level, had come to hear about these bizarre creatures who spent their lives alternating between consciousness and oblivion. The most remarkable finding, Lumi explained to the gathered scientists, is what happens during a phase called dreaming. Their brains create simulated realities while unconscious. Subject Jack described vivid experiences that never actually occurred. The room filled with murmurs of disbelief. Are you suggesting? Director Flux asked skeptically. That humans hallucinate regularly as part of their normal biological function. Yes. Lumi's skin glowed with enthusiasm. And they consider it completely normal. Some even look forward to these hallucinations. Professor Nix stroked his antenna thoughtfully. This raises more questions than answers. We need direct observation of this dreaming state. Lumi nodded decisively. That's exactly what I plan to do next. I'm going to monitor Subject Jack's brain activity during sleep and try to understand what happens during these dreams. There must be some critical evolutionary advantage to this strange shutdown process. As the meeting adjourned, one thing was clear. The mystery of human sleep had become the most intriguing research topic at the Galactic Study Center. Lumi's observation pod hovered silently in the corner of Jack's bedroom, its advanced cloaking technology making it completely invisible to human senses. Inside the small craft, Lumi had installed her most sensitive monitoring equipment, specifically calibrated to detect and analyze the neural patterns of human brain activity during sleep. Tonight was special. After weeks of external observation, she was going to attempt something no Lumian researcher had tried before, a direct neural interface with a sleeping human's brain to observe these dreams firsthand. Neural mapping program online, she whispered, checking the final calibrations. Brainwave synchronization ready. Jack entered the room, following his usual pre-sleep ritual. He checked his communication device one last time, adjusted the room temperature, and climbed onto his sleep platform. Within 20 minutes, his breathing had slowed, and Lumi's monitors showed he had entered the first stages of sleep. Beginning observation sequence. Lumi recorded. Subject shows normal transition through initial sleep stages. Monitoring for REM phase initiation. Lumi waited patiently as Jack cycled through the various sleep stages. Her research had revealed that these dreams occurred primarily during the rapid eye movement phase, which typically began about 90 minutes after sleep onset. When her equipment indicated Jack had entered REM sleep, Lumi activated the neural interface. A thin beam of light, invisible to human eyes, extended from her pod to Jack's forehead. The technology allowed her to receive neural signals from Jack's brain and translate them into visual and sensory data she could perceive. Neural link established. Beginning dream observation. The sensation was unlike anything Lumi had experienced. Her consciousness seemed to float in a bizarre landscape that constantly shifted and changed. Jack's dream began in what appeared to be his workplace, but with impossible architecture, doorways that led to oceans, ceilings that stretched infinitely upward, and coworkers with subtly distorted features. Fascinating, Lumi thought, careful to maintain a passive connection that wouldn't disturb the dream. The human mind creates environments that combine familiar elements with impossible constructs. She watched as Jack navigated this dream world with complete acceptance of its illogical nature. He conversed with people who weren't there, solved problems that made no sense, and experienced emotions that seemed disconnected from the events around him. Then something unexpected happened. The dream shifted, and suddenly Jack was being chased by something unseen. His heart rate increased, and stress hormones flooded his system. Subject appears to be experiencing a negative dream scenario, Lumi noted. Physical response indicates fear despite no actual threat. As Jack's fear intensified, Lumi felt an uncomfortable feedback through the neural link. Her own heart began racing, and her skin flashed warning patterns of bright orange and red. The sensation was so alien and distressing that she almost terminated the connection. But her scientific curiosity prevailed, and she maintained the link as Jack's dream suddenly transformed again. He was now flying above a landscape, the earlier fear completely forgotten. The joy and freedom he experienced flowed through the connection, causing Lumi's skin to pulse with pleasant blues and purples. Dreams shift rapidly with no logical progression, she observed. Emotional states change without rational cause. Yet the subject accepts all of this as perfectly normal while in the dreaming state. For 3 hours, Lumi remained connected to Jack's dreams, witnessing scenarios ranging from mundane conversations to fantastic adventures. When Jack finally cycled out of REM sleep, she carefully disengaged the neural link and sat back in her pod, her mind reeling from the experience. "Dream observation complete," she recorded, her voice slightly shaky. "The human mind during sleep is extraordinary. They create entire realities within their consciousness, experiencing emotions, solving problems, and processing information, all while their physical body remains inactive." As Jack continued sleeping peacefully, unaware of her presence, Lumi began analyzing the data. The neural pathways activated during dreaming showed striking similarities to memory consolidation, emotional processing, and creative problem-solving. It appeared that humans weren't simply shutting down, they were performing complex mental maintenance while unconscious. Could this be the purpose? Lumi wondered aloud. Do humans require this dream state to process information and emotions? Is this why they willingly become vulnerable for hours each day? She began compiling her findings, noting how Jack often dreamed about events from his day, but with strange variations. Problems he faced while awake sometimes found solutions in his dreams. Emotional conflicts played out in symbolic ways. I must expand the study, Lumi decided. Compare dream content across multiple subjects. Perhaps there are patterns that would explain this evolutionary adaptation. As the first light of dawn began filtering through Jack's window, Lumi prepared to return to the research station. She had witnessed something profound, a hidden world that existed entirely within the human mind, a world humans visited every night, while appearing completely dormant to outside observers. The mystery deepens, she recorded in her final notes of the session. These shutdowns may actually be when humans are at their most complex and fascinating. The morning light streamed through Jack's bedroom window, illuminating his still form under the covers. Lumi checked her chronometer with growing concern. It was 10:43 local time, nearly 2 hours past Jack's usual waking time on a workday. Subject has exceeded normal sleep duration by 118 minutes, Lumi recorded, her skin flickering with anxious yellow pulses. Vital signs remain stable but show no indication of natural waking process initiation. For 3 weeks, Lumi had meticulously documented Jack's sleep patterns. He maintained a consistent schedule, asleep by 2300 hours, awake by 7 o'clock on workdays, with slight variations on his rest days. But today was different. His alarm had sounded at 6:30 as usual, but instead of rising, Jack had merely reached out, silenced the device, and fallen back into deep sleep. Is this a malfunction? Lumi wondered aloud. A system failure? She reviewed her readings. Jack's brain showed normal sleep cycles, but his body temperature was slightly elevated, and his breathing had a subtle raspy quality not present in previous observations. Lumi's scientific training battled with a growing sense of responsibility toward her study subject. The prime directive of xenobiological research strictly prohibited interference with native species. But what if Jack was experiencing a dangerous malfunction? What if this extended shutdown was harmful? Computer, analyze all biological markers and compare to human illness profiles, she commanded. After a brief processing period, her system responded. Subject shows indicators consistent with mild viral infection. Human immune response activated. Extended sleep duration is a common recovery mechanism. So they sleep even longer when damaged? Lumi muttered, fascinated despite her concern. Their primary repair function requires even more shutdown time? Just then, Jack's communication device began emitting a series of sharp tones. Lumi watched as Jack stirred slightly but made no move to answer it. After several rings, the device went silent, only to start again moments later. Subject is ignoring external communication alerts, she noted, prioritizing repair cycle over social obligations. The device rang a third time. This time, Jack groaned and fumbled for it without opening his eyes. "Hello?" His voice sounded rough, different from his normal tones. "Jack, where are you?" "The client meeting started 20 minutes ago." The voice from the device sounded agitated. "I'm sick," Jack mumbled. "Can't come in today." "Send me the notes." "You sound terrible." "Do you need anything? Should I call a doctor?" "Just need sleep," Jack replied before ending the communication and dropping the device. Within moments he had fallen back into deep sleep, leaving Lumi with a research dilemma. This unexpected behavior pattern was scientifically valuable, her first opportunity to observe how illness affected human sleep cycles, but it also raised ethical questions about monitoring a being in a compromised state. Continuation of observation justified for scientific purposes, she decided. But intervention protocols should be established if subject condition deteriorates. Throughout the day, Lumi documented Jack's extended sleep, interrupted only by brief periods of consciousness to consume water or use the waste elimination room. His dreams during this period were notably different, fragmented, often featuring scenarios of being trapped or unable to move properly. By evening, Lumi's concern had grown. Jack's temperature had increased further, and his hydration levels were dropping below optimal ranges. Subject requires fluid replenishment but appears unable to maintain wakefulness long enough to adequately address this need, she recorded. Making a decision that would later be hotly debated at the research center, Lumi temporarily deactivated her cloaking field and used the environmental manipulation tools in her pod to slightly adjust Jack's living space. She increased the humidity to help with his breathing and positioned his water container closer to his reach. When Jack next awoke in a brief moment of consciousness, he seemed confused to find the water so conveniently placed but drank deeply before falling back asleep. Minimal intervention successful, Lumi noted, reactivating her cloaking. Subject hydration improved. Ethical boundary maintained while preventing potential biological harm. As night fell again, Lumi continued her vigilant monitoring. The data she was collecting would revolutionize Lumian understanding of human biology. These extended shutdown periods weren't just routine maintenance. They appeared to be the primary method through which humans repaired damage and fought off invasive organisms. The very thing that makes them vulnerable may also be what keeps them alive, she theorized in her research notes. Perhaps sleep isn't a weakness but a sophisticated survival adaptation we've overlooked. Jack stirred, coughing slightly in his sleep. Lumi's sensors indicated his fever had peaked and was now gradually declining. Recovery process appears to be functioning correctly, she recorded with relief. But the question remains, how far can this repair function extend? What happens when humans experience damage too severe for sleep to fix? And what would happen if they were denied this repair cycle entirely? These questions troubled Lumi as she settled in to continue her observation through the long night ahead. By the third day, Jack's condition had improved significantly. His temperature had returned to normal range, and he was spending more time awake. Lumi had maintained her observation throughout his recovery, documenting every change with scientific precision. Subject has resumed normal activity patterns, she recorded. Sleep duration has decreased to standard parameters. Repair cycle appears complete. What Lumi didn't expect was what happened next. As Jack sat at his desk, sipping the bitter brown stimulant beverage, he paused and looked directly at the corner where her observation pod hovered. "I know you're there," he said clearly. "I've seen the light reflections when your cloaking shifts. And things in my apartment have moved." Lumi froze, her skin blanching to a pale, shocked white. This was catastrophic, a direct violation of research protocols. No human was supposed to detect their presence. "I'm not afraid," Jack continued, still staring at the seemingly empty corner. "I've known for a couple of weeks now. You could have hurt me while I was sleeping, but you didn't. In fact, I think you helped me when I was sick." Lumi's mind raced through her options. Protocol dictated immediate withdrawal and memory modification, but something made her hesitate. This was an unprecedented opportunity, direct communication with a study subject. After a moment of internal debate, Lumi made a decision that would change the course of her research forever. She slowly deactivated her cloaking field, allowing her true form to become visible to Jack. His eyes widened, but to her surprise he didn't scream or flee. He simply nodded, as if confirming a suspicion. "I thought it might be something like this," he said, his voice remarkably steady. "I've been having dreams about blue lights and floating eyes." Lumi's translator processed his words, allowing her to respond in his language. "Those weren't dreams. I've been monitoring your sleep patterns. I apologize for the intrusion." Jack laughed, a sound Lumi had documented but never expected to be directed at her. "Well, that's both creepy and fascinating. Why sleep, though? Of all things to study about humans?" "It was accidental," Lumi admitted. "I was assigned to study human behavioral patterns. Sleep was unexpected. My species doesn't do it." Jack's expression shifted to one Lumi recognized as surprise. "You don't sleep? Ever? How is that possible?" "We rest briefly, but remain conscious. The concept of becoming unconscious for hours every day is completely foreign to us. It seems dangerous." Jack considered this, then gestured to a chair. "Would you like to sit down? This conversation might take a while." What followed was the most extraordinary research opportunity in Lumi's career. Jack explained sleep from the human perspective, how it felt to fall asleep, what dreaming was like from the inside, how refreshed one could feel after a good night's rest. "But why?" Lumi pressed. "Why do humans need to shut down this way?" "Scientists aren't entirely sure," Jack admitted. "We know it helps process memories, repair cells, clean toxins from the brain. Without it, we start to hallucinate, can't think clearly. Go long enough without sleep, and we die." "Die?" Lumi's skin flashed with shock patterns. "Complete shutdown just from missing this regular shutdown?" "Extreme cases, yes. But even missing a few hours affects our functioning." Lumi's mind raced with implications. "Yet you seem to enjoy it. You have special rooms, comfortable platforms." "Of course," Jack smiled. "Sleep feels good. Dreams can be amazing, like visiting other worlds or doing impossible things. Haven't you ever wondered what it would be like to just let go of consciousness for a while?" The question struck Lumi deeply. Her species prided themselves on continuous awareness, viewing it as their evolutionary advantage. The idea of voluntarily surrendering consciousness was alien, frightening, and suddenly intriguing. "Could I try it?" The words left Lumi's mouth before she could consider their scientific impropriety. Jack looked surprised. "I don't know if your biology even allows for sleep. But you could lie down, close your eyes, and see what happens." With scientific curiosity overwhelming her professional distance, Lumi agreed. Jack arranged comfortable pillows on his couch, dimmed the lights, and played soft sounds he called white noise. "Just relax, slow your breathing, and empty your mind," he instructed. Lumi tried to follow his guidance, fighting against her instinct to remain alert. For nearly an hour, she lay perfectly still, eyes closed, attempting to surrender consciousness as humans did so naturally. It never came. Her mind remained active, aware, processing. Whatever biological mechanism allowed humans to switch off, Lumians clearly lacked it. "I can't do it," she finally admitted, sitting up. "My brain won't shut down." Jack nodded sympathetically. "Maybe your species evolved differently. Maybe you never needed sleep." As Lumi returned to her observation pod that evening, she watched Jack fall asleep with new appreciation. What she had initially viewed as a vulnerability now seemed like a remarkable adaptation, a different way of being that her species had never experienced. "Perhaps," she recorded thoughtfully, "in some ways humans are more advanced than we realized." The main auditorium of the Galactic Study Center hummed with excited chatter. Word had spread throughout the station about student Lumi's unprecedented research, not just her observations of human sleep patterns, but her direct communication with a human subject. It violated nearly every research protocol, yet the scientific community couldn't deny the value of her findings. Lumi stood at the presentation platform, her skin cycling through nervous color patterns as she faced the largest audience of her academic career. The entire xenobiology department had gathered, along with representatives from evolutionary studies, comparative biology, and even military intelligence. Director Flux sat in the front row, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Professor Nix gave Lumi an encouraging nod. "Honored colleagues," Lumi began, activating the holographic display. "My research began as a standard observational study of human behavioral patterns. What I discovered instead challenges everything we thought we knew about consciousness, vulnerability, and evolutionary adaptation." The lights dimmed as Lumi projected recordings of Jack's sleep cycles, brain wave patterns, and dream activity. Humans spend approximately 1/3 of their lives in a state they call sleep, a period of unconsciousness during which their bodies appear vulnerable but their minds remain extraordinarily active. Murmurs spread through the audience as Lumi displayed the neural mapping of Jack's dreams. "We initially assumed this shutdown period represented a biological weakness, a flaw in human evolution that somehow persisted despite natural selection. Our own continuous consciousness has always been considered superior. I am here to suggest we may have been wrong." Lumi advanced to the next series of images, showing Jack during his illness recovery. "Sleep, it appears, is not merely a period of rest but an active state of repair, memory consolidation, and problem solving. During my observation period, subject Jack contracted a viral infection. His response was to increase sleep duration, allowing his body to direct maximum resources toward recovery." Dr. Beam raised a hand. "But surely this unconscious state leaves them vulnerable to predators or enemies? How did this trait survive evolutionary pressures?" "A valid question," Lumi acknowledged. "It appears humans evolved social structures to protect sleeping members of their group. They sleep in secure locations, often in family units where some remain alert, while others sleep. In modern society, they've created elaborate security systems to protect themselves during this vulnerable state." She advanced to her most controversial data, recordings of her conversations with Jack. "With the approval of the Ethics Committee, I am sharing limited portions of my direct communication with the human subject." She had secured retroactive permission for the contact, though not without significant debate among the committee members. The audience watched in fascination as Jack explained dreams from a human perspective, describing how solutions to complex problems often came to him during sleep, how emotional processing occurred in dreams, and how sleep deprivation severely impacted cognitive function. "Most remarkably," Lumi continued, "humans have turned this biological necessity into something they enjoy. They've created comfort-enhancing technologies specifically for sleep, they look forward to dreaming, and they've developed rich cultural practices around this daily shutdown period." Director Flux leaned forward. "Are you suggesting this trait is actually advantageous rather than a limitation?" "Precisely," Lumi confirmed. "While we Lumians pride ourselves on continuous consciousness, we must also recognize its costs. Our brains never fully process emotional experiences. We must actively set aside time for memory consolidation. And our cellular repair processes work more slowly because they must function alongside normal cognitive activity." Lumi displayed a comparative analysis of Lumian and human brain efficiency. Humans appear to have evolved a compressed processing system. During sleep, their brains perform maintenance tasks at rates up to 4 times more efficient than our continuous processing. They sacrifice awareness for efficiency in a trade-off that has served their species remarkably well. The presentation concluded with brain scans showing the creative problem-solving that occurred during Jack's dream states. In conclusion, what we perceived as a fundamental weakness in human biology may actually be one of their greatest evolutionary advantages. Their minds work differently than ours, not in continuous, measured processing, but in intense bursts of activity followed by profound integration periods. The auditorium fell silent as Lumi's presentation ended. Then, slowly, Director Flux rose to his feet. "Student Lumi, your research methods were unorthodox and violated several protocols. he stated formally. The audience tensed, anticipating a reprimand. Instead, his skin shifted to the blue pattern of approval. However, the significance of your findings cannot be denied. You have changed our understanding of human biology, and perhaps our own. As applause filled the auditorium, Lumi's thoughts drifted to Jack, who was likely entering another sleep cycle on Earth below. The human who shut down for hours each day, who willingly surrendered consciousness to drift through dreams, had helped her see that different evolutionary paths could lead to different kinds of intelligence, neither superior nor inferior, just beautifully, fascinatingly diverse. Perhaps, she thought as she accepted the accolades of her peers, there are other kinds of consciousness we have yet to discover. And perhaps we have as much to learn from humans as they have to learn from us.